Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Wesley John and I'm the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager at the Ivors Academy. February is of course LGBT History Month, and the Ivors Academy has joined the national celebrations by officially launching our LGBTQI Working Group. We have been very active on Instagram and also uploaded a specially curated Apple Music playlist selected by our working group. Take a look at the Ivors Academy Instagram account and listen to our playlist on Apple Music. The Ivors Academy has taken this positive step to openly acknowledge the inspirational and vital contribution that LGBT community has made to the creativity of the UK, in the art sector, in our music industry, and the wider society. It is often said that we live in the most openly libertarian society that has ever existed, where there is seemingly no or few limitations to living the life you choose. Of course, it is never that simple, and often far from that carefree utopian ideal. This afternoon, our panel of composers and songwriters will discuss their career stories and experiences in direct relation to being a part of the LGBT community. We will also discover influential LGBT composers, songwriters, and performers from the past who had to hide their sexuality, and explore with this group how openly acknowledging their own sexualities has influenced their career decisions and creative output. As the home of songwriters and composers in the UK, I am delighted that the Ivors Academy is proactively engaging with our LGBT community of music creators and given a platform and voice to this multifaceted music creator experience. Our panelists this afternoon are taken from a broad range of the Academy's membership, all of which are trailblazers of creativity in their own fields and genres. Now let's look and see who's around the table this afternoon. Firstly, I want to introduce you to our host, the composer Will Davenport. Will is currently studying electronic music and composition at Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Will has been commissioned by a number of leading art institutions such as the BBC and the Barbican, and has featured at festivals including Sound Unbound. Will's current projects include a debut album, an experimental audiobook, and an interactive event for string quartet and electronics. The singer-songwriter Tenzin writes poetic songs reflecting experiences of unrequited love, coming of age, and navigating the world as a Generation Z. His musical style is a heady, nostalgic mix of 60s rock and bedroom pop, which, although seemingly familiar, reveals to his audience many new perspectives in everyday life. Tenzin has recently released a debut single called Blue and is currently working on releasing his first EP this summer. Jasper Dommett is a multi-award-winning composer and a 2020 Ivors Composer Award nominee. He is currently a composition student at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama and has had several works performed by outstanding ensembles such as the BBC National Orchestra of Wales and the London Sinfonietta. Recent projects have included being a part of the BBC's Composition Wales scheme and writing the work Night Music for the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, and an experimental site-specific work written for the unique acoustics of the Tate Gallery called Rothko Room. Jasper's brass band music has always also brought him particular acclaim by being commissioned to write a fanfare by Girton College, Cambridge, for their 150th anniversary celebrations. Current projects include his first operatic project, Coram Boy, which is a collaboration with director and librettist Fleur Snow. Amber Jay Higgins is a songwriter and music artist who always has been fascinated by the relationship between music and screen. This influence can be felt in the cinematic moods that encompass the experimental production of her music and the immediate connection of character narrative in her songwriting. Amber's multi-genre debut EP, Never Too Far From a Dark Thought, will be released on the 3rd of March. With that music can be described as a unique, atmospheric and cinematic creation. Edmund Jolliffe is a prolific choral composer and has won several choral composing competitions. His works have been sung by professional and amateur choirs in the UK and internationally, including by the London Gay Men's Chorus. As well as a choral composer, Edmund has forged a career writing scores for TV, with his compositions being featured in programmes broadcasted by the BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and Netflix. Edmund is also a widely published composer, with his music being available to purchase and hire through Oxford University Press, the ABRSM, Spartan Press, and many more. Carmel Smickersgill was also known by the Ivors Academy community as a 2020 Rising Stars Award nominee. Based in Manchester, Carmel's works predominantly within classical and electronic genres and has been commissioned by the Liverpool Philharmonic, Ensemble 1010, Fretwork, and the Galvanised Ensemble. Outside of notated music, Carmel's projects with live electronics and in pop has led her to work with the thought-provoking theatre company This Egg, as well as performing with the band Bunny Hoover. As a result of her Rising Stars nomination in 2020, Carmel is currently being mentored by the composer Anna Meredith. At last, but by no means least, I want to introduce our very own CEO, Graham Davies. Graham has dedicated his working life to defending the rights of composers and songwriters, working for many years at PRS for Music as Director of Strategy. Graham has led numerous projects, including digital music licensing and international partnerships. And following a period working with music and technology startups, Graham joined the Ivors Academy as CEO in 2018. Since then, Graham has led a dramatic transformation of the organisation, which has seen rebranding from BASCA to the Ivors Academy, significant equality, diversity and inclusion progress across the organisation, new partners such as Apple Music, and the relaunch of the Ivors Academy Trust. He has spearheaded important campaignings such as #FishStreaming, which has brought global attention to the DCMS Select Committee to streaming concerns. Graham is also a classically trained musician who has continued to perform since leaving university, and in recent times he has embarked on writing his own music. Well, enough of me talking. I am delighted this afternoon to welcome our panel, Tenzin, Jasper Dommett, Amber Jay Higgins, Edmund Jolliffe, Carmel Smickersgill, Graham Davies, and of course our host for this afternoon, Will Davenport. Hi guys, welcome everyone. I must also mention that our group is unfortunately incomplete, as the composer Lloyd Coleman is currently supervising online auditions for the Para Orchestra, where he is the Associate Music Director. Before the conversation starts this afternoon, I want to let you know that we encourage you, our audience, to submit questions for the panelists throughout the discussion. I will be looking out for your questions and trying my best to make sure that they are an active part of the conversation as it happens. There will also be a chance for a more formal Q&A at the end of the session, and questions can be submitted for this part as well. Please post your questions via the chat function on your webinar screens. And now, finally, over to you, Will.
Thank you, Wesley. Thank you for that really wonderful introduction. And I'm really proud to be able to host this fantastic panel of, I'm sure you will all agree, very, very talented individuals. And I wanted this panel to contain all of the members of the working group because it can really show you the breadth of the genre that we have within the group. Because in terms of genre, some of the group are classical composers and some are songwriters and producers. And of course, some like myself sort of dance in between these two genres. And so what we'd really like to do today within the panel is sort of explore how, as LGBT creators within different genres, we may or may not share similar experiences. So, but first I would like to ask Graham first, as the CEO of the Ivors, why did you want to be a part of this working group? And why do you think it is important to have this within the Ivors?
Thanks, Will. Hello, everyone. Really also proud to be part of this today. In terms of, I suppose, my connection with the group is as CEO rather than my limited creating abilities. And really, I think for me, it started with joining the Ivors Academy. And, you know, the Academy has had a strong history of doing projects and initiatives related to diversity, but I think there was an opportunity for us to really put this right at the top of the agenda, and that's why I'm actively involved in all of our equality, diversity, inclusion work. You know, we're looking to kind of catch up in some areas, but then start to push the organisation and the industry for any kind of reforms which make for an inclusive industry that supports anyone that wants to follow a creative path to do so and fulfil their potential, and take up the positions in the industry of influence and authority that creators should have. So for me, it was really important for us to actually form an objective, have a vision, appoint Wes as our EDI manager, and then we have a steering group which I attend every one of those, and to really show that the organisation, you know, I'm taking it seriously, the organisation's taking it seriously, and so that I can also support any initiatives that come through from our members as to what's going on, what needs to change, or what can we celebrate, because that's the other thing. And for me today is very much about being visible and celebrating. So the other reason I'm specifically on this working group is I'm a gay man, so my journey through the industry, I've never worked for a gay boss, and I don't know if I've ever worked for a gay boss, if you know what I mean. So I think it's important, you know, from my perspective, I think it's important for people to be visible, because then people know, you know, that things are inclusive. So that's me, that's why I'm here, but I'm a bit of a odd one out, because these are all amazing music creators and I'm not. So, but I'm very happy to support it.
It's funny that you say that, because we do have a track. So we're going to try to sort of tie in tracks that we can play for everybody. But just another question, as a gay CEO, would you say within the music industry that it is supportive of LGBT creators, or would you say that there's still a feeling of stigma?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think one of the things that was coming through when we as a group got together and I joined was some of the generational differences, and you know, some of that is kind of really relevant to now, and other things have moved on. So and we talked about stigma, and that was something that was definitely, you know, more part of, I think, maybe my experience as a gay man growing up than maybe for other people now. I think on my journey through the industry, I mean, I've been on more of the sort of administrative banking royalty side of things, which is quite corporate in its nature. And I think my observation is, I think it's a mix in terms of how inclusive the industry is. I think there's some genres which, you know, are more, and through my training, you know, knowing Benjamin Britten and Michael Tippett, and there's always been these kind of people that I think were out and very sort of visible, and I think it was, I don't know if it was okay, but it was accepted. But then seeing that, I think in other parts of the industry, there's a lot of pressure for people to stay quiet about their sexuality or their gender or their difference. So I think it's a mix. For me, one of the reasons for wanting to be involved actually is for me to understand from the creative community, from the Ivors community, how is it? You know, what are there barriers? Is there stigma? Are there things that we could do to break that down? So I'm on a bit of a discovery mission here, Will, to understand it.
And tying it into the track that you've shared, would you say that your work within as a creator has also explored your identity?
Not yet. I have to admit, I'm starting out, so I would hope it would. I mean, I think, you know, my message. I mean, I was out from 17, so I've always been out. So everything I'm doing is about me, if you see what I mean. So it would, you know, I would hope that my music explores, you know, my life and my interests. So therefore, that's my being a gay man too.
Well, let's listen to the first track then. Let's listen to the clip that Graham that you've given us. So do you want to introduce it, or shall we just play it?
So it's a piece written with Lauren Landon, who's a very talented, she's the talent, I'm the side person. So she's actually, I can see one of the participants today. So she co-wrote it with me and we both performed it.
That was really gorgeous, really nice. Yeah, I know it's a bit surreal, sort of having everyone sort of listening to it in our little Zoom box. But yeah, I wish we could talk about that more. But I feel like we should move swiftly on through the panel. So, but regarding what Graham was talking about within the industry and the mix within the industry, I think this brings us on to something that we have discussed within the working groups, sort of as creators. Should our sexuality be public or should it be important? Does it even matter? And so I would sort of like to start by asking Tenzin about that. As a songwriter who is currently working on your first EP, do you feel the pressure to confess all about your sexuality within your music?
Tough question. You know, I think as someone who loves creating music and who wants to take his work seriously and want other people to take my work seriously, I want my music to stand for what it is, you know, for its talent or skill, and don't really want people to judge my work on, you know, my sexual orientation or my background and such. But at the same time, as a singer-songwriter, you know, I'm not just backstage, I'm front stage as well, and people see me. They, you know, have assumptions about lots of different things about me. So, and that affects their relationship with my music. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I don't quite have the answer, but something that definitely I think about all the time.
And also, I guess there's the sort of the gaze of like management and labels. And would you say that you feel the pressure there too, to sort of maybe hide something or to look or be cautious of how you are sort of presented?
Yeah, because, well, I've heard lots of stories about other musicians, singer-songwriters, who were encouraged not to reveal their sexuality, especially early on in their careers. And I also kind of have the same view where, you know, I don't want to be limited by just being a queer musician. You know, I want to be a musician more than anything. And that queerness is, you know, just a part of me. It's not my defining feature. But yeah, there are those roadblocks to that. Yeah.
So you've given us a track to share, and is this from your new EP?
Yes, it's still in the works. So this is an exclusive preview everyone's getting. It's a song I've written, I thought I'd share because it's kind of appropriate with the theme. It's very much about being queer, even though it's a bit vague. I don't think it's that vague, but it's in the lyrics. And as a songwriter, I like to tell stories, you know, more than anything. And this song depicts a story about queerness, and this is only just the first minute because I was limited to that minute. But you'll hear the rest of the story in my EP. So yeah.
Nice. Well, let's. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
He landed on the shores one night, said he'd outgrown his small little village town and took flight. Heard this place was full of newfound gold, a promised land for the young and old to live a liberated life. And I said, oh stranger, do you know where you're going? It's easy getting lost. Folks like you and I are better off floating together amidst all the fog, and we're dancing like sailors in the moonlight. The waves crashing on, lift our feet in the air.
That was really gorgeous, really nice lyrics too. Yeah, really nice. And it's interesting, isn't it, how as songwriters, there's always a major concern about the lyrical material, or perhaps the how much you reveal about pronouns within the lyrics. And I think that can be shared maybe with the compositional world in the way that you use a text. So I would sort of like to ask Jasper, as a composer, do you think, do you think it's important to be transparent within your music as a composer? And do you think about this when you're setting text?
It's interesting. I feel like transparency as a classical composer is very different from transparency as a songwriter, like you say. And for me, being transparent is in how I act and who I am. And I come from a very small, backward, bubbled town in Devon where being gay is like you're cursed to the devil kind of thing. And I never had anyone to look up to say that it was okay to be gay or to be anything I wanted to be. So when I went to uni and obviously became one of myself, I made it like my mission personally to be transparent for those who are younger than me, to kind of go, yeah, do you know what, it's okay to be me. But then the question comes, yeah, how do I say that in my music? And is it important to say it in my music? And yeah, setting text is one thing. And actually I set some Whitman songs because I felt it was important to set text by a gay poet, or in the closet, as it were, because I felt like I could actually relate to the words. And I felt it was important to, write these songs or this song cycle with those texts, because I feel I could truly understand that kind of secrecy and actually how it must have felt being so hidden away. So yeah, transparency in setting text, I think, is one way of doing it. But then just being genuine and being transparent, in a concert hall, like Graham was saying, there's certain demographics. And I think in classical world, there is a demographic. And, when I've been in a traditional kind of song weekend or anything like that, you look around and the average age is 70 to 80, no offense, that's just how it is. And you're immediately put in this sense where, oh, I need to dress politely, I need to say certain things, but it shouldn't be like that. And, as an artist, you should be genuine to who you are. And the more experienced and wiser I get, the more comfortable I am with that. So yeah, transparency as oneself, I think, is as much important as being transparent within your music as well.
And would you say within the classical demographic that through being transparent that you can sometimes be maybe labeled in a similar way to how a songwriter might be labeled? I see a lot of female or trans or non-binary artists can be labeled as sort of cathartic or like confessional writers, and it's as if they've put so much of themselves in the music that it sort of becomes only about that, and it reduces the it reduces the actual composition and how you actually made it and the skill that it takes to do that.
Yeah, I think labels is such an interesting thing, and through the whole of our education and musical education, we use them to associate with different genres, different music, jazz. We label everything because that's, as humans, we enjoy doing that, and I think, God, why do we need to? Music's music at the end of the day. And actually, the more pressured I feel to label my own music, and when people say, oh, what's your musical voice? And you have to come up with a word, just, oh, I'm this type of composer. I think it's just a load of, well, must not swear live. It's a load of rubbish. And in my personal life, I feel that, because I'm non-binary, I feel that like labels shouldn't mean anything, and when you're doing that in your music, I think we need to come to a state where we stop labeling things, and it's just art. You know, it's just art at the end of the day. It's who we are and how we're expressing our own inner voice, and there shouldn't be labeled. It shouldn't be labeled in any way. It's just how we want to say how we feel at the end of the day.
Does anyone else within the panel sort of have anything to add to that, or any other angle to that?
I think the less you label things, it's like the better, because it just puts less restrictions on the creator as well to go in certain directions, or maybe be, you know, like feel like they have to stick to one genre. I know, like, especially at the start of my career, it's very quick people to be like, so what sort of music or what sort of genre are you? And truthfully, I'm still finding my feet and trying to find what genre that is, and I don't really want to box myself in one genre for the rest of my career. And so, yeah, I totally agree with what Jasper's saying.
So talking about sort of trying to define your music, how would you try to define what you're going to play to us?
Gosh. Well, yeah, this piece, as Wesley mentioned earlier, was the piece I wrote for BBC National Orchestra Wales, and I wrote it just after my nan passed away from cancer. So it's a goodbye letter to her, if we can call it anything. And just, yeah, if it's a specific term, it's a nocturne for orchestra, but I don't think we want to get too much into that. It's just a nice piece to say goodbye to my nan. That's all it is.
Really gorgeous, really nice, and it shows the mix and the breadth of the group, really, that there's so many different sort of styles and aesthetics, and lots of different sort of angles on music, which is really refreshing. And so I guess a different angle could come from Amber too, and Amber is also a songwriter who has talked about the issues of being open as a songwriter within the industry, and she's working on a project at the moment which involves interviewing 3 queer music artists, showcasing their work and talking about the relationship between music and their identity. So Amber, can you tell us more about your project and why representation is so important?
Yeah, sure. So I chose to interview 3 queer artists and kind of make a bit of a mini documentary on those 3 queer artists, and discussing things like influence and identity and songwriting, and kind of how our identity seeps into the stories that we're telling. And I started it because really I wanted to give a platform to the artists to kind of share their experience and their truth, and to showcase them as as artists and their music and their art and what they're creating, and hopefully, you know, give them an environment which they feel safe, like they can share and be honest and transparent in, which, you know, hopefully makes people feel comfortable and feel like they can relate to what they're saying. But I think growing up, I would seek out a lot of queer stories and find a lot of comfort, and try to make sense of myself through other people's experiences. And so I think this project is really just to add to the sea of content that's out there, to just, you know, have more stories out there which reflect what society looks like in all senses. Because I think that's really important, you know, to have everyone's stories reflected.
Do you ever feel like that can put you in maybe a vulnerable position as being an out creator within the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I've often thought about it, and you know, I've thought about who exists now in the spotlight, and who was out at the start, and maybe who rose to sort of success and then came out, and tried to think, was there a correlation between it? But I think there's cases that prove, you know, being an out artist doesn't hinder your success, and really just brings a stronger community together, and you know, you just build that fan base even more. And especially with the way the internet is now, and audiences are finding, you know, the people and the musicians that really you know, they can connect with, and really reflect them as people, and they can hear themselves within. And I think the power is really shifting in that sense of where people can discover people very like easy these days. And I think for myself, I'm very happy to be an out artist, because I think I just feel like I feel empowered by other people being out and other artists, you know, kind of like what we're all doing today. And I think I'd find it harder actually to be like dishonest, and to kind of go into my career just batting back and, you know, just trying to stay low. I think that would be much harder than just being honest and embracing everything, really.
Yeah, it's something that we've talked about a lot, isn't it, within the meetings, this sort of life cycle of how artists maybe come out when they are able to within the industry. And it can often kind of be a bit of a lose-lose situation, because if you come out, then it can look as if you are trying to get publicity for your latest album. And I'm sure some people may want that positive publicity for their latest album, and it can sort of ask lots of extraneous questions that don't actually relate to the fact that it should be good that you're out and open. And that's the whole point of why we are doing this, like you say. And it's powerful to also have a mix of generations being out, because it does say, you know, things are improving, and that there isn't one identity. We all have, you know, our own stories, our own experiences and journeys. So yes, so let's listen to Amber's track. I've been told I should give a heads up that this song starts with a bang, but if Amber, if you want to sort of give us a bit of info on what you're going to share.
Yeah, so this was my first single off the EP that's coming out on the 3rd of March. And yeah, it was the first time I kind of heard the music I wanted to make. I was in a petrol station waiting for the pump to be free, and I got sent over the new mixes, so I stuck them on while I was waiting. And I remember just like laughing out loud in the car, because I was like so full of joy, because I was like, this is, you know, this is great, I love this. And I was probably in a bit of like disbelief as well that it sounded any good, because I was entirely always just doubtful of myself. But it was the first sort of track that I was like super, super happy with. And the song as well, like I think I was really confident with using the pronouns of she in it as well. And then I didn't really hide from it, from doing that within this track. And I sometimes forget, to be honest, that I have used she pronouns, and I've had other people turn around to me and go, oh, you've like, it's so cool that you're like singing she. And I'm like, it takes me a minute to like you know, really get onto what they're even saying. I'm like, oh, that old thing, yeah. But yeah, this is Pencil Brims, and it's my first track off the EP, so I hope you like it.
She steals smoke from strangers' fingers, takes a slip within their soiled lips. Why makes it is the final glimpse of your smile before I close my
I'm not sure what happened to Will.
Yeah, Will is just having a few technical problems at the moment.
Okay.
I do have a question, so he will hopefully rejoin us. I do have a question from Emily Major to the whole panel. Do you think that schools teach enough about queerness, especially in terms of music and the queer history surrounding it? I don't know who would want to comment on that first of all.
I mean, maybe Edmund, you might want to say something to this. I suppose we, being slightly older on the panel, I suppose we've experienced Section 28.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's a curious one, and I do teach as well, university level and school level. I've never really addressed that question, probably to my shame. I've never really thought about it. So the simple answer to that is probably no, schools aren't enough. If I'm not, then I suspect nobody else is, and we should probably all try and do more, as a very basic answer to that question. For no particular reason, it just hasn't really occurred to me, although sometimes it is, of course, part of the composer's story, so it should be mentioned, yeah.
Great, and maybe sticking with you, Edmund, I'll try my best to be Will. Which I will fail at because Will was amazing. A bit about your sort of your past in terms of your composition, and obviously you've written for a number of gay themed projects. So I suppose did you want to speak about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm more akin to sort of Jasper, and I'm a classical composer, whatever that means, but also write for the media as well. I haven't ever particularly thought out setting gay texts. There are so many wonderful texts to set anyway, that just hasn't occurred. But I did get involved with a project a few years ago, part of the London Gay Men's Chorus, which was called the Shame Chorus Project, which was quite an interesting one for me. It was the psychoanalyst Susie Orbach was interviewing members of the London Gay Men's Chorus, and they transcribed the interviews, and a number of composers were given the text, including people like Billy Bragg, David McCalmont, and lesser mortals like myself. And we were given this text, and we could do whatever we wanted with it, but we were to interpret it in some way and turn it into a piece of music that they then sung. And it was quite interesting to me because I grew up in a very liberal family, liberal school, university, and I've never had any issues with my sexuality, and like you, Graham, been out from a fairly young age. And I was reading this interview with this man that was very specific about his own personal circumstances and his relationship with a schizophrenic father, and I was thinking, I can't really relate to this. It's not part of my story. But as it got further into the interview, and he was talking about sort of how that affected his life and his sexuality, where he felt shame about things and why he felt shame about it, I thought, oh, but there is definitely an aspect of me that still has a part of shame about my sexuality, despite being pretty much a very out and proud gay man. And I thought, well, that's the key thing that I'm going to use in my text. And I kind of pinpointed one line that became the chorus of it, which was a part of me, which is a good line to sing anyway. And that's what I think is true to my story, and that's what you were saying earlier, Graham, that it doesn't inform every piece of music I write, but my sexuality is a part of my life, so therefore it does have an impact in some ways. So it's a really interesting project to be a part of, and a part of me.
Great, and the master's back.
So sorry about that. It's not Zoom or lockdown without a technical sort of catastrophe. My laptop just crashed, so I'm sorry about that. Midway through what Amber was saying, I hope you all enjoyed Amber's track. And so we've moved on to Edmund. And Edmund, have you told us anything about the track that you're going to share?
I have not, but that segues very nicely. So this has nothing to do with anything, just a little carol, but I do write a lot of choral music. Really, I should have played you the song I've just been talking about, A Part of Me, but I didn't have a decent enough recording of it, although I'm sure one will find that if you're interested on the internet. So this is just a little extract from a carol, Still, 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 sung by the Aura Singers. Enjoy. Thank you.
That was really beautiful. And I was wondering if Graham managed to ask you about another piece that you wrote called Load More Guys.
Well, I don't want to monopolize, but just briefly. So I have, because I was thinking when we were talking about this in the working groups, have I really addressed my sexuality specifically in music? I remembered I did write a piece called Load More Guys, which is taken from a popular gay dating app, Grindr, which I haven't opened for some years. But anyway, if you want to meet people around you, can press a little button and it shows up who's around you. And I thought, well, this is quite interesting. It provides a little kind of ringtone. And I thought, oh, it's quite interesting because how many people you can speak to that you don't know. And I thought, I'm going to put this into a piece. So I wrote basically a kind of orchestral piece based on that for Coma. But this is a sort of gift of exploring the positive side of exploring one's sexuality. Is you can explore things like that wouldn't necessarily speak to a straight audience, if you like, but it's a sort of world that many of us do know about. So it can be quite fun and playful to play around. It wasn't meant as a sort of serious piece. So yeah, that's all that was.
Has anyone else within the panel sort of had sort of explored that playful experience within your music, of sort of put in little kind of sort of LGBT sort of hints in a similar way?
Not LGBT specific, but I did also write a piece for Coma where I made everyone hug at the end, which now in a COVID world seems very unsafe.
Well, actually, that really brings me on nicely to you, Carmel, who is a contemporary classical composer. And I think it would be interesting to talk about how, in addition to sexuality, do you think that the visibility of gender is important within classical music? And do you think that you can hear gender, or is that just a sort of an out of date, sort of obsolete way of thinking about things?
I think because instrumental music, like some classical and beyond, is an abstract art form, people want to put associations on it, and I think people's brains just look for things they can attach onto, and usually these can be like based on stereotypes, and often our stereotypes could come from a very binary sense of what gender is. And so actually what I find quite encouraging at the moment is that these stereotypes are sort of broadening out, and so there might still be gender stereotypes, but maybe not as like feminine, masculine. It might be that actually the spectrum's just broadening slightly.
And also, I think it can be quite interesting as a composer to find ways to play with stereotypes and then sort of subvert them and then twist them into something new in a maybe like a sort of a postmodernist way of doing it, I guess. And but it's important to point out that Carmel actually came up with the main premise of this discussion and this idea of hidden histories. And do you think it's important that not only that we do this, we are visible? Do you think that it's important that artists who maybe have been forgotten by history, that we speak up to normalize queerness for them?
Yeah, definitely. I think what made me think about the sort of premise for the panel in the first place was I watched the Whitney Houston documentary for the first time over Christmas, and I hadn't realised before that she was like a bisexual woman, basically. And as a bi woman myself, I was like, that just gives me a whole other level of appreciation for her as an artist, which actually I think the more that we look into the past in any genre, so because I'm from like a classical background, you can look and there's like a really, really rich history of particularly like queer women writing music. And so there's sort of like, there's some kind of lineage and there's some kind of like canon of people who, it's like Jasper was saying before, of having those people to look up to when you're starting out or when you're like a young composer. But actually it's probably because there's so much time passed between those artists working now, or when they did and now, that people have gone and done the research and found it out. And genres like jazz or like pop or hip hop won't have been researched in the same way because it's maybe just not enough time has passed for people to turn it into, like, go into those kind of LGBT areas in scholar, like academic work. But the more we do that and the more you find people's sort of like hidden stories, the more it sort of reframes how we see that history, and the more that we see it's not actually, often I find queer artists could get like pigeonholed or could get put into sort of like, oh, well, they're this kind of person because they write this kind of music in this kind of space or genre. And the more we find people who are queer and also in the mainstream or in like worlds that would typically be seen as maybe like quite masculine dominated, the better it will be for other artists coming through.
So bearing in mind that obviously we have this platform, do you think that the Ivors need to do something about this? Do you think we as the Ivors should be putting more energy into research and looking at histories of composers that have maybe been forgotten and highlighting them within the Ivors?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a balance of like not just doing one thing at a time, maybe doing like everything all at once as much as you can with the platform that you're given. So I think the Ivors are brilliant at like giving voice and space to creatives as they are doing like right now. But also then maybe if that inspires other people to do their own research or inspires people already doing academic work to look into these areas, then great.
So Carmel, we have a track for you to share. So would you like to tell us more about the track?
Yeah, this is just, and maybe it plays into like the ideas of gender and stereotypically what would be like feminine sounds, because this maybe isn't that. But it's a piece I wrote for Ensemble Tenzin, and this is a live recording from like 2019.
That was really nice. And we've just had a question that comes in that sort of relates to this and actually might relate to your piece. A general question from Jamie: in any genre, to what extent do you think stereotypes of sexuality and gender are enforced by notation, especially historically? So that's a big question. So everyone feel free to chip in.
That's quite a big question. I don't really know how to answer it, but there is something which maybe is what Jamie's getting at that I think is quite interesting in music. There is something traditionally referred to as a feminine cadence, with the end of a chord progression, which I think is onto a weak beat or something, which is appalling, and there's something we wouldn't use in modern terminology. And whenever it comes up, I think, oh, it's definitely something that should be addressed. Well, not quite notation, but it's the only thing I can think of that, yeah, is awful and should be changed. That's for what it's worth.
Well, I was going to maybe turn the tables on you at this point.
Okay, yeah.
Because you can't escape the questions. So in terms of your compositional life, what's your, I suppose you've been instrumental in all of this, leading this group and stuff. So what's your ambition here? Why are you doing this?
I think my ambition sort of reflects what everyone has said is sort of most important, I think, for the working group, which is to be visible and to be representative of a community of LGBT creators. I think it's really important, and I think it's really powerful for listeners, for young listeners, for audiences. I'm sure it's been integral for me throughout my growing up to be able to listen to queer artists, and empowering, and I think that's the most important thing, really. Yeah. And
do we have some of your music to hear?
Yes, yeah, we do.
So do you want to say a bit about it?
Yeah, so what I'm sharing is part of my debut album, which is called I Can't Get Out of Bed, and it's an exploration of me finding my own way to be confessional, to be cathartic, and finding a sort of compositional sort of language for that. So it's a lot of the music is quite sarcastic, it's quite angry, it's quite anxious and stressful, but it reflects a period of my life that I wanted to document within some music. So as a warning, it's quite loud, and yeah, so don't blow your speakers.
You've got the mic, Will.
I've got the mic. Well, that's it, I suppose. Shall we wrap this up now, or?
If I could butt in, we do have
Yeah,
two questions, actually, before we wrap up. We might run slightly over. One was to Tenzin specifically. I wondered if you could tell us a bit bit more about your experience as an LGBT Asian musician and how it affects you as a musician.
I think, well, I think maybe that really comes into play, maybe more into what we were talking about earlier with management and labels. Maybe I think probably me being Asian brings more barriers than me being LGBT in a lot of areas. In terms of my music composing, I definitely find, I think more than what, in my music, what I try to do is find ways that I can express myself and ways I can communicate to people in ways that we are similar rather than different. So rather than me trying to find my own voice and differentiating myself as Asian or LGBT, I really tried to dig into themes and emotions and ideas that a lot of us feel universally, you know, because if you really listen to a lot of music, a lot of popular music, and also a lot of good music that people really like, you know, they discuss and express ideas that everyone can feel. Yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Okay. Thank you, Tenzin. And the last question to, I think, everyone, anybody can comment on this, is Mika Smith wonders, I'd be interested in hearing about any trans composers, songwriters, performers in history, about any of the panelists' experience of being open about trans identities.
Well, I think it seems particularly relevant to talk about Sophie in that respect. You know, she passed away only a few weeks ago, and I mean, it's an interesting period in which we live, where, you know, a producer like Sophie has worked on, you know, hundreds of major records that we would never realize, and we're at a point now where it makes the news that Sophie has passed away, and that is important. But I think we're at a point where we have to document, you know, the work that trans producers, performers do, and there's definitely work to be done there. And I think there's definitely work to be done within the working group too. And I think it's important to say that we want to expand the working group. I want to get more sort of experiences, more transgender, non-binary people within the working group, and we want to expand this. So it's important to say that if you're interested in being a part of this, then do get in touch with the Ivors and do, or get in touch with myself. But if anyone else has anything to add.
Yeah, I would say on Sophie in particular, because her work, she managed to like gain that amount of success just through like completely being herself, and I think it takes a certain type of personality to be able to do that in an industry that's maybe fighting against you at most steps of that journey. So I think it's for all of us in any kind of creative community to find those people who maybe don't have those kind of personalities, to like boost them and lift them up to be able to have that same kind of success that they might not have, or they might not have the drive or the like motivation, because it's hard when it's something so personal as your like identity that's being fought against. Yeah.
Thank you, Carmel. Will, if I can take the reins back and just wrap up. Okay, great, thank you. It's been a wonderful and inspiring conversation this afternoon from our working group, and we've had some great questions from our audience. I would like to thank Tenzin, Jasper, Amber, Edmund, Carmel, Graham, of course, and our host, Will, for giving up your time to be with us this afternoon. A special thanks goes to you, our audience, of course, for joining us this afternoon, and a huge thank you goes to my Ivors Academy colleague, Tariq, for helping out behind the scenes with all the technical stuff. Many, many thanks, Tariq, as always. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation this afternoon and that you will join us again for our online events throughout the year. If you are an Ivors Academy member, we have our next member social on the 15th of March. And if you're not a member, what are you waiting for? Visit our website and join as a member. I would also like to mention that we are still open to receive entries for our Rising Star Award with Apple Music for the Ivors 2021. There's no fee for entering the Rising Stars Award. For further details of our future events, please visit the Ivors Academy website. And to apply for the Ivors 2021 Rising Star Award with Apple Music, please go to the award section. The deadline for entries is the 26th of March, 5 p.m. GMT. Many thanks, everyone, and see you again soon.